A new report states that the number of organized anti-Muslim hate groups in the U.S. nearly tripled last year, reaching from 34 to more than 100. The report issued by the Southern Poverty Law Center credited what it called incendiary rhetoric of Donald Trump's presidential campaign with a rise in anti-Muslim hate. The report said several senior White House officials are serious anti-Muslim ideologues. It was also found that there are now more than 900 active hate groups across the U.S., ranging from neo-Nazi groups to racist black separatist organizations. The report concluded that Trump's sudden rise in the 2016 presidential election fomented the tide of racist and far-right extremist groups after decades of living on the fringes of the American society. To get more insight into the story, we go live to Seattle in the U.S. to talk to Richard Silverstein, journalist and political commentator. Mr. Silverstein, it's a pleasure to have you with us. What do you think of the findings of this report by the Southern Poverty Law Center? After all, it's saying that the number of hate groups in the U.S. more than tripled last year.
Well, I guess it says that the number of anti-Muslim hate groups tripled. It says that the overall number of hate groups rose slightly, but the largest gain by far was in anti-Muslim groups, and this was fueled directly by the campaign rhetoric of Donald Trump during the election campaign and by his success in being elected president. And we can see this level of Muslim hate in the highest levels of the U.S. government, not just President Trump, but his advisors Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller and others have a visceral, deep hatred of Islam that really takes us back to the religious holy wars of the Middle Ages, the Crusades, and these people believe that the United States needs to fight a holy battle, an end times kind of apocalyptic battle against Islam, and that Islam is, in its very nature, pure evil. And they also don't believe that Islam is a religion. They believe that Islam is a political ideology, and that allows them to set aside any protections that Islam might have as a religion in the United States. It's very, very alarming, and I think we can see some of this violence really in everyday life. The examples are in Quebec City, we had a white supremacist assault a mosque with guns and kill 6 people. We had a mosque burned to the ground in Texas. In my own community here in Seattle, we've had several of our mosques have been vandalized by hate groups. And this can only get worse, I think, as time goes on. Donald Trump, his rhetoric is violent and it's angry, and it really encourages the worst in his followers.
And I'm glad you brought up the case in Canada, because it seems that with Trump's coming to power in the U.S., the rise in hate groups and also hate crimes and hate attacks, especially against Muslims, is not just limited to within the U.S. borders. We're going to see more in, for instance, in Canada and also across Europe.
Yes, I think it's very important to note that the rise of Donald Trump coincides with the rise of anti-Muslim hate among political parties in Europe. You've got Marine Le Pen in France, you've got Nigel Farage in the UK, you've got anti-Muslim hate groups throughout Europe, Germany and other places, and this is ominous, and there is going to be there is a backlash against Muslims happening because of the unrest in the Middle East, because of a flood of refugees that have come from North Africa and from Syria into Europe and the United States. And there is this horrific backlash happening in which the United States really has turned its back on its traditional democratic values. values, its traditional role as a refuge and a haven for immigrants and those who are persecuted around the world. I'm hoping that there are strong elements in our society who fight back against it. We have court cases now that are rejecting Trump's policies towards Muslims and refugees, and we are going to fight as strong as we can over the next 4 years against what Trump represents.
Thank you so much, Mr. Silverstein, for talking to us. That was Richard Silverstein, journalist and political commentator, joining us out of Seattle.